And we're live. There we go. Very excited. This is a very special episode. Usually I predominantly cover Cosmos here. Most of my guests are from the Cosmos space, developers, builders, all these kind of things. But today I'm joined by Jordan Fried, who is actually very big and has been a founding member actually also at Hedera. And actually I've been covering Hedera also here on this channel 2 years ago. I had an interview with Lehman, the inventor of Hashgraph, 1.5 years ago. So always love to stay updated, even though it's very, very hard in this fast-moving crypto space. But yeah, I'm joined by Jordan. So we're going to talk about Hedera. We're going to talk about his crypto thesis for this year, maybe some predictions, NFTs, since he's owning NFT.com, which is a good domain to have, I guess. But yeah, first of all, Jordan, thank you so much for doing this. Really appreciate it. How's everything going?
Great. Happy New Year. I guess we still have to say that because it's still like, January, early in 2023. Listen, congrats on your success. It's great to see, crypto creators thrive on YouTube, and your channel is doing quite well. So congrats on the discipline and the consistency required to continue to put content out there. One of my big goals for this year, why I'm sitting in a ridiculous setup like this, is to try to do more of what you're doing, which is I've been so behind the scenes building. And I think it's really important for me, especially as a leader of some of the businesses that we're building, is for me to be able to start putting content out there, because we're all fighting for impressions in this crypto space, and to be able to use those impressions as a source of new users for the software that we're building. That's crucial for us, especially with NFT.com and private beta and stuff like that. I'm sure we'll get into it, Michael. So thanks for having me.
Yeah. And I mean, your office looks, or your background looks amazing. So definitely something I also have to ramp up. My background is pretty boring, but it's
yeah. But you're in Portugal and I'm in Puerto Rico, so I think that I think you're not doing too bad, right? Sorry if I doxed your location. Apologies.
No, it's fine. I'm always traveling anyway. So, but it's great to talk to you. Maybe let's start off with your early involvements in Hedera. I don't know, what was that your first kind of like full-time exposure you had in crypto, or what did you do before that, and how did you end up at Hedera at such an early stage?
Yeah, Michael, my story is more one of, I love the word serendipity. Serendipity describes, it's a great movie with John Cusack, if you haven't seen it, romantic comedy. But it's also describes a fortunate accident. I was an American expat, literally a kid with no direction in life, didn't finish college, had actually lied to some family members about finishing college, and just left school, moved to Budapest, Hungary. And while I was living in Budapest, you're traveling a lot, so you'll know this. I really missed my US IP address. I missed the ability to log into, Spotify, to Hulu, Pandora, to watch my Buffalo Bills, my favorite American football team. And I built a VPN tool for myself and some friends. It ended up being called Buffered VPN. And it was while running that company, I ended up selling that company in 2017. It was my first software exit. I was 27 years old at the time. And it was while running that company that we got this, heads up from a user saying, hey, could I pay you in this thing called Bitcoin? Bitcoin was around $150 at the time that we started figuring out how to take it. So I never had to buy my first crypto. I was running a totally separate software business, helping, honestly, to be candid, like American expats watch the American Netflix library in Europe before Netflix's global expansion. And we started taking Bitcoin. So that was 10 years ago this year. And if I didn't, I think so much about this. If I didn't move to Budapest, if I didn't start a VPN company, if I didn't open that email from that user, would I be where I am today? And that's why I can only refer to it as serendipity. Of course, I believe we make our own luck, and we get luckier by putting ourselves in positions to succeed. And obviously, I took the risk to move to Europe. I took the risk to start that business. But that's how I got into crypto. After selling that business, it was pretty clear to me that I needed to leave Central Eastern Europe. There just wasn't a lot of organic opportunity. It always felt like my friends in the US were discovering, all the new and latest tech months, if not half a year before I was getting it and discovering it. Good music, good electronic music was coming out of Eastern Europe. But besides that, I was missing all the tech and all the innovation. And I decided to pick up, leave Budapest, stop being an expat, move back to the US, ended up living in New York City. In 4 days after moving into New York, I mean, again, you can't make this up. A buddy of mine who I met in Budapest in 2012 sent me the Swirlds white paper. It was called the Hashgraph consensus algorithm. There was no Hedera. It was a algorithm, an asynchronous Byzantine fault tolerant consensus algorithm, which was a proposal. It wasn't a blockchain. It was a proposal for how you could build a better blockchain that technically wasn't a blockchain at all. It was a directed acyclic graph. It was a DAG was the data structure. And I didn't just put all my money in it. And I did that. I sort of took all my chips and put it behind this. First, it was into a company called Swirlds, and then was one of the first investors in Hedera. But I stopped what I was doing at the time. And honestly, at this point, this is like the beginning of the summer 2017. I wasn't really doing anything fulfilling. I wasn't building a business. I really missed the building a software business. And I was just making early stage investments in crypto companies. Like every SAFT that came across my desk, I was basically deploying capital into. I wasn't even doing, I didn't know how to be a VC. I didn't know how to deploy capital. So I really appreciated meeting Mance and Lehman. I became, the third or fourth person in the organization. I ended up adopting some fancy title called Senior Vice President for Business Development. And that's how it all happened. I don't call myself a co-founder. I'm not a co-founder. Mance and Lehman are the only two co-founders of Hedera. But I was the third or fourth person in the org to start going to market. And that's how I got into Hedera.
That's an awesome journey. Yeah, there's also your pinned tweet on your profile that explains a little bit about your journey, right? It's very motivational, to say the least. Starts with 10 years ago, I was totally fucked up. I was fat, I was broke, I was drinking 5 nights per week. And since then, you've built several multi-million dollar companies, including a $1 billion unicorn. So yeah, that's really impressive. I think also crypto, in the end of the day, provides a lot of opportunities for people to really gain traction fast if you're fully committed and take the risk. And also, in the end of the day, there's also luck and coincidence involved, right? Same how I got into Cosmos. It's a similar journey, right? It was also pure coincidence. But I think it's also good to just stay, focused on one thing. Always be open, but always, focus on one thing, become really good at that. And it seems like you've been doing this over the years. So you're still involved with things around Hedera. As far as I understand, you're also still an HBAR bull. You're trying to also build stuff around it with NFT.com. So maybe talk a little bit about, before we get into details, you mentioned just now that Hashgraph is not a blockchain, right? So for those from the Cosmos community that are not familiar with what Hashgraph is, how Hedera works, can you explain on a high level what you mean by that and why it's not a blockchain?
Yeah, so people always turn their heads when I say this because they're like, it's not a blockchain. I'm not interested in it. And you'd be really mistaken to take that kind of quick glance at Hedera and look the other way, because Hedera does everything a blockchain can do, but much, much more. So when we talk about a blockchain refers to the data structure that powers a proof of work blockchain. It follows longest chain principles. You have all of these infrastructure providers, we call them miners, that provide CPU bandwidth and storage to add these computer resources to the network. And they're fighting for the right to add a new block to the chain. And that's how it goes. And they put an order of transactions to all the transactions in those blocks. They add the block to the chain and they get a fraction of the block reward. The Bitcoin block reward is something like 6.125 right now, I think. And then we have in the spring of 2024 to 3.125, right? Hedera works in a totally separate way. Lehman came up with this brilliant, you had Lehman on your show. So you can really see the brilliance behind this. First, Lehman is this crazy academic type. I had at this stage had really never met anyone in my life like him, who had spent 20 plus years, I think it was like 25 years in the US military doing research on cybersecurity. They had built a missile defense simulation program for the US military. They'd worked on all of these projects that they honestly couldn't even talk about. Lehman holds the fastest PhD from Carnegie Mellon University and goes on vacation to do math for fun. I mean, his level of thinking and what he had figured out is the best way to come to consensus is not a blockchain. A blockchain is one solution to the Byzantine generals problem, the keeping all the computers on the network in order and in agreement on the state of balances across the network. But you could do it with a voting-based algorithm by removing the need to vote. And he came up with this protocol, this gossip about gossip protocol that memorializes every time two computers communicate with each other in the form of an event. An event is like the equivalent of a block in Hedera. Events have timestamps and arbitrary transaction payloads, like, HBAR is powered by, sort of the payload behind HBAR fits into an event on the Hedera network. And you start to build this graph. So Hashgraph refers to a graph that's bound together by cryptographic hashes of computers memorializing every time a computer has spoken to another computer. Literally every time two computers talk, we memorialize that. And the exciting thing about that is you can come to consensus at ridiculous speeds. I mean, Hedera comes to complete finality in, I think, under 6 seconds right now. And it is the transactional throughput is ridiculous. I mean, I was checking, there's like a website called HederaTPS.com, I think, and Hedera is like constantly bursting over 500 to 1,000 plus. I've seen like, 1,000 plus transactions per second on a pretty consistent basis. So it just opened up the realm of possibility to use cases that you wouldn't be doing on Ethereum, you wouldn't be doing on a proof of work blockchain, but you could do an IoT. You could power like a Helium style network. You could do all of these other things. So my mind is like blown at this particular point. And honestly, Michael, like I think at some point you just you drink the Kool-Aid, and I drank the Kool-Aid, and I'm like, shit, I'm all in. Like I am going to, and I meant with my time and a huge piece of my capital. Like, that whole investment advice, diversify. Like no real wealth was ever made being diversified. And this is not financial advice to those listening, but like all asymmetric like wealth gain is made by believing in something before anyone else believed in it. And, I'm where I am because I believed in Manson Lehman before anyone else believed in Manson Lehman. I was like the third or fourth person to believe in Manson Lehman in that way. And I didn't just put my money in it. I put my time in it. And to be clear, my role and what I did there. So hopefully people listening understand better. Leave comments. I saw a comment pop up. So thanks for the compliment. I'm one of 10 kids. So if I sound articulate, it's not because I'm trained to speak. It's because I have 3 brothers and 6 sisters. And my mom made one thing for dinner, and we had one TV in the family room. So I had to fight for what I wanted to eat for dinner, and I had to fight to watch what I wanted to watch on TV. So I can speak because of the big family, and growing up in a big family is awesome, but that's personal. My role was to pitch. Clearly I can pitch. I have no credentials to pitch. I have no credentials to be in a boardroom, right? That post was, I was a fuck up 10 years ago. I was fat. I was drinking 5 nights a week. I mean, beer in Budapest was like $1. I could go out and get a really good buzz on for like $5 and then go out and have great nights. And that's what I was doing. I was aimless. I didn't really know how to spend my time. Of course, I cleaned it up and built that software business. And by the time we're building Hedera, I had lost a bunch of weight by figuring out what a carbohydrate was and to stop eating, refined sugar and building all this. And now Lehman had tasked me, Manson Lehman had sat down with me, and they're like, here's the vision. We've got to build a governing council because Hedera isn't just going to be decentralized on the compute side, right? Hedera wanted to be decentralized like all other protocols by having the infrastructure be run by people all over the world. But Hedera wanted to be decentralized on the governance side because lots of people were working on performance, lots of people were working on security, but no one had solved governance and the stability of the network. No one had solved like who is making the decisions for when we upgrade the node software, who is making decisions for how we price smart contracts, who's making decisions. Ethereum had a massive freeloader problem. I still think it does, because you could just look up transactions, which consumes all of these free ledger explorers, which consumes all of the resources of on the network. So we needed better ways to be able to, like, how do we solve these problems, and who's going to be making those decisions? And, you know, to Mance and Lehman's credit, they were like, it shouldn't be Mance and it shouldn't be Lehman. It shouldn't be Jordan. It should be a group of the biggest, most trustworthy companies in the entire world, because they're the ones that have the most to lose. They're not going to do something stupid to jeopardize their reputations, and they should be competitors. They should be in, you know, multiple different industries, and they should be geographically distributed. So my job in 2017 was, I shit you not, my job was to go knock on the doors of the C-suite executives, CIOs, CTOs, CEOs of multi-billion-dollar multinationals, and convince them to join what is today called the Hedera Governing Council, which is, you know, governed by Google, IBM, Boeing, Deutsche Telekom, Nomura, the Standard Bank Group, the largest bank on the African continent, the Development Bank of Singapore, you know, some of the biggest companies in the world, to govern this network, which means literally means to sign a limited liability company to govern the network, but also run a node on a blockchain-like network like Hedera. It's a blockchain-like network. We call it a distributed ledger technology. It does everything a blockchain can do, as I explained. And they laughed at us. Every single one of them. They laughed at us like, you're crazy. What the hell do you mean? Like, run nodes on a blockchain? It's 2017. We're Google. Why the hell would we do that? And it took a long time, a lot of rejection. Mind you, the price of Bitcoin rises to 20,000 by the end of 2017, and then comes crashing down by March, April, May of 2018. And the headlines are Bitcoin is dead. So we kept going. Eventually, we got 1, and then 3, and then 5, and we kept going. And we built this Hedera Governing Council, and it's one of my proudest accomplishments in my career. It's one of the hardest things I ever worked on. It definitely won't be the hardest thing I ever work on, but at the time, it was the hardest thing I'd ever done in my career up until this point. And I think a lot of it was my mindset. I was like this still young kid when we were starting the business. I was 27 years old, and I remember walking into some of these boardrooms, and I remember meeting Thomas Kurian, the CEO of Google Cloud, for the first time. And Thomas Kurian, I had to fly to Cleveland, Ohio. Thomas Kurian was announcing this multi-billion-dollar deal with the Cleveland Clinic and the Mayo Clinic in Cleveland for Google Cloud. And I had to walk into a boardroom at like the Holiday Inn off like the convention center, where he was about to speak on the main stage and announce this multi-billion-dollar partnership. And I got 30 minutes to pitch him why he should join the Hedera Governing Council. And I remember, you spend the whole night, the night before that pitch, just thinking, I don't belong in this room. What the hell am I doing in this room? Like, I don't have any credentials to be pitching this guy. And thank God I had a lot of support. We had an incredible team. Hedera still has an incredible team. I had a big support team, a big support system. Mance always believed in me. Lehman always believed in me. There was a great company culture there, and we got it done. And Hedera is not where it should be from my perspective. You mentioned I'm an HBAR bull. I continue to be an HBAR bull. A lot of people weren't pleased to see me leave Hedera. I didn't leave Hedera because of an issue with Mance or Lehman. I don't have a bad word to say about either of them. I left because I'm still young, and I am very good at the first 3 to 5 years of building a business, and I am very bad at the 5 to 10 year point where I'm exactly the right person that should be getting businesses to traction, and not the ones not the one that should be building all those systems and processes. Once we had Google on the council, once we had all these companies, it was such a bureaucratic organization. And listen, I would put a suit and tie on. I'm wearing like a backwards hat right now and a Nike hoodie. It was like, it challenged me in a way that I needed to be challenged, but I'm much better off here building on top of protocols like Hedera. And that's what I'm focused on right now.
Yeah. And on the note of the council that you mentioned, I think in the beginning, like when people just saw that, Google is governing the chain and all these big companies, it quickly, like Hedera quickly had this perception that it's basically the anti, thesis to what crypto is supposed to be, right? Because you just see like, hey, there's like 6 governing members and they're all big companies. Like, don't we want to replace them somehow, right? That was always the thinking. So when I started to learn about what the process actually is and how the end game is supposed to be, and I think Lehman did also, videos about this. There's also a great video from Lehman explaining about the different layers of decentralization and how you gradually get there. So that's interesting. But now we do have 27 members. I just look at the website, 27 members in the council. There's 39 slots. And as of my understanding, the end goal is, and once these slots are filled up, it should open up for also individuals and, people that are not part of this circle or big institutions, that just anybody could run a validator or a node. Is that how it's going to be? And how would that work? And do you have any ideas of like timelines? When would that be possible? That would be a good...
It's always been the goal. We stated that from the very beginning. The goal was always that everybody should be able to run infrastructure on the network. Hedera is a proof of stake network. The idea behind why you needed governance was a multitude of reasons. You needed governance to protect a style of attack where a bad actor could buy up a very large percentage of the token supply and disrupt consensus by changing the state of the network, by changing the account balances on the network and doing something like that. So the council is trusted to slowly release HBAR into the market and had made those decisions to be able to get the network to a point where it would be economically prohibitive. I think today, the fully diluted market cap of the network is like over 2.5 billion or something like that, or close to 2.5 billion. And it would take you like $1.25 billion to buy up 51% of all the HBARs in circulation, and likely much more than that, because that's just at today's price. As you're buying it, you're going to be pushing the price up, and it would become prohibitive for someone to like disrupt consensus. So that was the thinking. The original treasury balance was staked, I believe is still staked to the governing council nodes on the network. But the idea is that anyone should be able to run infrastructure. Hedera has this concept of mirror nodes that don't participate in consensus, but simply relay what's happening on the network in real time. And lots of people in the community I know run those. But Hedera can power multiple shards. So eventually Hedera, if it needed to, Hedera doesn't even need to move to a sharded system, because it is so performant from the standpoint that to peak out, to max out the amount of transactions in one shard, I think it'd be like well over 10,000 plus transactions per second. And the network's not doing that right now. So I believe when the first shard gets to capacity, Hedera will likely move to a sharded system where, what you could send your transactions to the network and it'll get fulfilled by shards. And I know Ethereum is looking to do something like that at some point in the future to continue to look at scaling. But it shouldn't just be council. I still think you shouldn't have a perfect democratic system where everyone can make the decisions. I think that the council members bring a level of maturity and scrutiny to how the network is run, that they're unwilling to do certain things. And I think that's a good thing. Like Hedera, these guys are like regulated in a multitude of ways. You've got financial institutions, you've got some of the largest tech companies in the world. They aren't going to do something that's going to cause them to get into a whole bunch of trouble. And I think we're rewarded for how we structured. So it sounds counterintuitive. And by the way, in the very early days, we got so much hate for how we set this up. Like, what the hell are you talking about? Why are you bringing the biggest companies in the world into crypto? Like, crypto is going to put the banks out of business. The truth is, maybe one day that'll happen, but like, we're somewhere in between. Like, we're not in we're not fully in Web 3. We were in Web 2. We're probably in Web 2.2 or 2.3 or 2.5. But like, on the way to Web 3, banks may become obsolete in certain functions. I don't know that they ever fully become obsolete, but why don't we partner with the banks and help them bring their perspective? And not everybody loved it, but I do believe it's the right path.
There's also some Web3 companies such as Chainlink Labs, I think, Binance that are in the council. Do you have any insights or any guess what other, companies or organizations could be, joining the council this year?
Yeah. So everyone, this is like the number one question I get asked. I don't have any inside knowledge. I don't know what's coming. I have a great friendly relationship with the people still over there. And I know that the organization continues to work hard. And it's actually changed so much because you actually have council members recruiting other council members, inviting other partners and companies that they work with. So that's changed a lot, like the University College of London and all of these other amazing institutions. So I can tell you that when I was working on this, we had, there wasn't a company we weren't talking to, except for the large Chinese and Russian companies, because we were very afraid of state-run companies being on the governing council. So we didn't have companies that were more than, I think it was like 70% controlled by a particular government on the council. I originally had made trips to China on a few occasions, to Shenzhen and to Shanghai, to have conversations with Tencent and Huawei and some of the biggest Chinese companies. But we later stopped recruiting Chinese companies for the fear of political fallout, uncertainty there. But I can tell you, we were talking to everybody: Apple, Disney, Microsoft, and these are not short sales cycles. It took us 18 months to get some of the council members, right? It could take years. Keep in mind, like, you're working on something and then the guy you're working on it with leaves, or the girl you're working on it with leaves and gets hired by a competitor. I remember, like, we were talking to people at Visa and they'd leave to go work at MasterCard. And then you've like 18 months of work, like, whoa, man, it was very, very frustrating. But again, it challenged me in a way that I think I needed to be challenged at that stage of my career. And it was, I've got nothing but fond memories.
Another thing that I'm sure you got a lot of hate for was that Hashgraph for a long time was closed source. It was also protected, right? But as far as I also observed over last year, you guys went open source, or the Hedera team open sourced, I don't know if everything or most of it, which now obviously, as Milton is stating, opens the doors for competition. Can you maybe walk us through the code base, open source, and all the thoughts behind the decisions that were made?
Yeah, listen, again, I don't want to throw shade, but I think this is something we fucked up and we got wrong. And I'll just be like really candid with everyone listening. And it's one of my bigger regrets that I wasn't more vocal on this. And I was very vocal on this. But when we first started the company, Manson Lehman had actually patented originally the Hashgraph consensus algorithm. And before everyone freaks out, like, patented technology, what the fuck? Like, let me explain. The idea was to patent the algorithm, and we weren't going to do a public ledger with it. When I first met Manson Lehman, their go-to-market strategy was to license Hashgraph as a consensus algorithm to large multi-billion-dollar multinationals, like the company sitting on the council, to have them build their own blockchains, to like an inter-Microsoft blockchain or an industry blockchain with maybe like just the banks. Like, we'll do a blockchain with just credit unions, or a blockchain with just... And it took, I think, a bunch of young guys like us and girls who came into the organization to say, hey, we see this opportunity in what's happening in the public blockchain space. Private blockchains might be a thing, but I really don't think that they were going to be. And there became this big internal pressure. Manson Lehman had talked about doing a public blockchain at this point, but it just wasn't in the go-to-market. And that's when we really started having these serious conversations of forming Hedera. I believe one of the biggest mistakes we made to get to the point is Hedera should have open sourced the consensus bit of the algorithm from the very beginning. I don't see the algorithm as anything proprietary. The algorithm itself is amazing. It's in order of magnitude better than other competing algorithms like Tendermint and other things in the market. From just like a pure consensus perspective, it's totally leaderless. Lehman had done something really great here. But the whole value of a blockchain, like when you look at how do you value a blockchain, how do you value a layer one protocol, it really is a function of the network effects, like how many users are on the network and how much value is stored on the network. Like, a phone network isn't very valuable if only Jordan and Michael can call each other, right? Like, who's going to get that phone installed in their house if like just Jordan and Michael can use it? But if a lot of people have the telephone installed in their house, this is like Metcalfe's law, the network becomes proportionally more valuable to like the population of the network and how much value they store on the network. And look at it in like developer logic. Like developers, when they're looking on building on protocols, they want to build on protocols with the largest number of unique addresses, the largest number of active addresses, and the largest amount of value stored in those addresses. They literally look for those things. So as the price of ETH is running up, whether it's driven by speculators or not, developers are attracted to capture that value, which is why I believe in 2017 we saw a complete flow of new developers, some good, some scammers, issuing ERC20 tokens to capitalize new companies, but some of them ended up being real companies like Uniswap and things like that on the Ethereum network, right? Hedera, by not open sourcing, it was a massive turnoff to developers in the very early days, and it hurt us. Just objectively, it hurt us. People would look at us and they turn our eyes. So one of the comments, Milton Bates here writes, we open sourced under the Apache 2 license in 2022. That eventually was the right decision. It should have happened in 2017. That's my only point. If we would have open sourced it sooner, we would have had way more developer interest in the project. I think we would have had way more contributions to the core layer one. And instead, it was an evolved decision. I was no longer at Hedera at this particular stage when they made that decision, but I applaud it and I'm happy it eventually happened. Better late than never. I regret that it didn't happen sooner.
I also want to ask you about interoperability and your thoughts on Cosmos in a second, and also your thesis for 2023 and what narratives you think are going to be big. But to wrap up the topic around Hedera, what is currently the ecosystem like? I mean, what type of applications are there right now? Is there already a major DEX? Is it like anything like what we see on Ethereum? What are your favorite dApps on Hedera? Maybe you can talk a little bit about that.
Yeah, so for those that are like coming to, I'll do like a quick primer on how to use Hedera and like where to start. Definitely go to hedera.com. A lot of the links are right there. Hedera just redid their homepage, so you can see there's over 1.5 million now mainnet accounts created. It's actually, they show the number of transactions in the last 24 hours is over 50 million. Hedera, much like other protocols, you need a special wallet to use it. The best wallet for Hedera right now is Hashpack. It's a Chrome wallet. It also now has an iOS version. The team behind Hashpack is amazing. It's a great UI UX. So go check that out. The number one NFT market on Hedera is a market called Zeus. So there's a lot of activity. Zeus.market is where you can find Zeus market. So Hedera does NFTs. There's amazing NFT communities on the Hedera network. It's exciting to see. Hedera does have DEXs. So if you go to defilama.com, which is a pretty big site, you can actually go check out what some of them are. If I just pull up, let me just like check. Total value locked. Obviously it's corrected, but there's a DEX, a saucer swap. Hedera has a version of Hedera has USDC on its protocol, so there's things being built there. But I think what really differs is you actually have now enterprise deployments of use cases, which is where a lot of the transactional throughput is coming from. So the website I referred is actually not Hedera TPS because that didn't show up. I think it's Hedera transaction, TXNS. So Hedera TXNS.com, and you can actually see right now the Hedera main network is bursting 652 transactions per second, every single second. That's right now, and that's just absurd. So you can go check some of these things out. That's largely driven to I know it's Avery Dennison has a use case called Atma. Health. So, this guy Stelios is saying he's staking HBAR on Saucer Swap. Yeah, like that is great point. Like that is there's staking. I think Hedera is paying 6.5% native protocol staking, so you can stake to like the Deutsche Telekom node, or you can stake to like the LG Electronics node. So you're staking to a node powered by a multi-billion-dollar multinational company with good reputation. It just feels much more trustworthy. I run an open source HBAR wallet. You can go check it out. It's based on the My Ether wallet. It's called myhbarwallet.com. So you can stake in the My HBAR wallet. We don't make money on that. We don't charge you a fee. It's totally open source, totally free. So you can check that out. So listen, I love the ecosystem. I love what's going on there. Yeah.
I'm also using Hashpack. It's very nice, good UX. and I'm also staking through actually Stater Labs. And I think the rewards are subsidized from the HBAR. There's the new HBAR foundation, right? Yeah.
Yeah. So our chief product officer now at NFT.com, he's a very good personal friend of mine. I actually met Don Tebow while he was at IBM Blockchain. I convinced Don to stop trying to sell blockchains to enterprises and come help us build Hedera. Don was the director of product management while we were launching the Hedera network. So he's a great product manager. He helped us get the layer 1 protocol at the door. Now he's the chief product officer of NFT.com. Don, before he joined NFT.com, stood up the HBAR Foundation, which is like a $2 billion plus ecosystem fund dedicated to giving these developer grants to lure utilization of protocols. And, you know, it's a well-known model in the space. And Hedera, again, Hedera is not rightfully valued. I think Hedera is really undervalued. I really think Hedera should be a top 15, top 10 protocol. It's a massive chip on my shoulder that it's not. I definitely think we'll see it there one day, but you know, there's probably some things we could have done better, myself included. Like, you know, maybe if I would have landed PayPal or Microsoft or a big company on the council, maybe if we would have open sourced sooner. I think a lot about that in every business, by the way. It's not just Hedera. I think what could have done better in the VPN, and I obsess over those things. So one day, hopefully, not investment advice, do your own research, but I do believe, I personally believe and hope to see Hedera as a top 10.
It's still ranked 39 and it has a market cap of 1.4 billion. So you obviously did a lot of things right. So I think.
Thank you. It bugs me. It just bugs me to see people with lesser technology who came later ahead of us, right? Like it bugs me to see Doge, a meme coin. Like when you're working so hard, your blood, sweat. I cried. Like I have many nights where I cried myself to sleep when like companies would reject me, and I'd be on these business trips. I'd be away from like my family for weeks on end, and like it's emotional, man. Starting a business, a lot of uncertainty, and then like a meme coin, a dog meme coin, is ranked higher than you and is a total joke, and you're like sweating over here trying to build an L1. It was a total, yeah.
Yeah, I think Doge is still acceptable because, you know, it's Elon Musk is, you know, behind it basically at this point. But Shiba Inu is wild. That's a wild one for me. I don't understand that, but whatever. And Shiba Inu is 6.3 billion, ranked 16. That's totally, I don't understand that. But anyways, it is what it is. But I think to your point also, you know, crypto grows in cryptocurrencies grow with the narratives that are currently hot. And, you know, maybe there's going to be a DAX season one day. Maybe there's going to be a Hedera season, and, you know, something just needs to go viral that brings a lot of eyeballs on Hedera and makes it big. You know, just as the Avalanche partnership, for example, we just had, right, that immediately pumped AVAX 50-60%. We had a Solana season. We had the what is it? Solunavax season last year with, you know, Terra and all these kind of things. It's all narratives and a short period where everything just pumps and then ideally it stays there or it dies. But I think organic growth in the end of the day is still the most important. But well, maybe one of the things that could make Hedera a top 10 coin at some point, or HBAR, could be also something that you're working on with NFT.com, or how is that affiliated to Hedera, and what do you actually aim to build there?
Yeah, so we started, and a lot of HBARbarians, I think, and a lot of them were a little bit upset, but we actually didn't start by building NFT.com on Hedera. And I think a lot of people in the Hedera ecosystem misunderstood what we were trying to do initially, right? When you are building when you're trying to build a decentralized application, and I kind of already alluded to this at the very beginning, the logical thing to do is to not pick an obscure, unknown or sparsely used platform, but to launch on a platform with 100 million plus users if such a platform existed, right? If we were to launch on Hedera at the time, I think there was only like 500,000 users on Hedera at the time, and very few of the accounts were actually funded, and very few of them were actually active. So we actually launched initially. We did and we're not fully public yet. We're in a period we call private beta. We launched a Genesis key as an ERC-721 token on the Ethereum network to allow early users to beta test the earliest features of the platform. The goal, I'm going to be very candid with you, is direct. Ethereum has a lot of good things behind it. It's introduced us to a lot of it's actually most people's first interaction with a blockchain, but it's got users, it's got funded accounts, and our goal is to get all those users and all those funded accounts and get them interacting and transacting on NFT.com. That's goal number one. The large overarching mission is to support NFTs wherever NFTs exist. NFTs exist on Cosmos, they exist on Solana, they exist on Avalanche, they exist on Hedera, they exist on so many other different protocols. Our goal is to start by focusing on user acquisition with NFT.com. It's a great brand, but it's useless if no one uses it. So we need users. And as we get those users, I think history has shown us that if you have a great user experience, you can guide those users to a protocol of your choosing. And I think we've saw that with Binance, right? Binance started not having a blockchain at all, and then guiding all those diehard BNB holders and those diehard users of Binance in the early days to PancakeSwap on their own chain, right? To things that they had built for those users. Crypto.com, similarly, people forget Crypto.com. Kronos wasn't Kronos. Kronos was Crypto.com coin as an ERC20 token on the Ethereum network. And then all of a sudden, there's a mainnet migration over to a Crypto.com native protocol. So what lesson can we learn from these two things? I think it's that the focus, and I actually went about this backwards, Michael. I focus on bottom up, right? Build a layer one protocol, launch it. And then I think a lot of people get this wrong because launching a layer one protocol is a lot like launching an operating system. And if you don't have Microsoft Word and Microsoft Paint and a calculator and a bunch of stuff for people to do, they don't really like stick around, right? So when you launch that layer one, you got to have people to have things to do. And by the way, I know this is going to be controversial to say, but Do Kwon did this really well. He took the Cosmos SDK, spent like four or 5 months building the Terra protocol, Terra.money, Luna, that powered Luna, and decided to focus on collateralized stable coins, as we all know, but spent all of his time building Anchor protocol and Mirror protocol and all these things for Chai, a payments application, all these things for people to do. A lot of people building protocols don't focus on the application layer, like the stack of applications that people can do on the protocol. They just build really great protocols. And again, I think it was one of the mistakes we made early on at Hedera. Now I'm going top down. Now I'm focusing on NFT.com. If I can get a lot of users on NFT.com that have a really good user experience and a really great, a really great community of users, and we make it social, we're trying to go after the name service space. I hate these .eth, .sol names. To be clear, like there's no utility to be like Jordan.eth. Right? There's nothing I can do with that. It just obfuscates my alphanumeric public key address. But if I can be NFT.com/Jordan, if I can use that to obfuscate my public key address, if I could also have that be my gallery, if I could also have that be my social identity in a social community, I think NFT.com has a really good chance. So could we then guide users to cheaper protocols with better user experiences like Hedera? Absolutely. And I think that that's going to be in the trust building process of, it's a big jump. It's a big jump to a leap of faith to go from not using a blockchain to using Ethereum to like, okay, now I'm going to go try a Hedera. Like that takes a lot for people. Not everyone's savvy enough to do that. But if we can slowly introduce them to more performant protocols in the future, absolutely, that's the goal. So I don't know if you call that a Trojan horse attack. I don't know what you call that, but strategically, you need to start where the users are. And there's 200 million accounts on the Ethereum network. A large percentage of them are funded. We got to focus there.
Fair point. Yeah. By the way, how did you land NFT.com? That's obviously an insanely good domain. How did you land that and when?
Yeah, I appreciate that. So I'm a degen, and I'm always plugged in because like working in crypto does not feel like work. I am so unbelievably blessed, as are you, Michael, to like do the fact that we get up to do this. I was thinking about this the other day. Like the fact that we like get to wake up and do crypto stuff all day long is unbelievable. I'm so grateful to be able to do that, and because I was able to do that, I have such shiny object syndrome. Like I'm always moving a million miles a second, and it takes me a lot of discipline to like stay focused on one thing and get good at one thing. But while we were building Hedera, I would always buy these domain names, and I'd go to Manson Leem, and Manson would be like, we got to go to the governing council. But I'd be like, hey, I really want to buy HBAR.com. And they're like, why would we buy HBAR.com? I'm like, it's the name of our token. Like, we got to buy HBAR.com. And I'd go to the governing council, and they'd be like, go for it. Like, we don't want to buy it, but like, go for it. And I'd negotiate a crazy price all of these things would cost like tens of thousands or hundreds of thousands of dollars. So I'd buy like HBAR.com, and then I'd go to them and be like, central bank digital currency is going to be a thing, whether we like it or not. Like, it could be terrible for the world, it could be great for the world, but it's going to be a thing. We got to control the narrative, and we got to be part of it. And I'd go like, I got CBDC.com. We got to go buy this thing. And they'd be like, go for it. And they weren't interested. So I'd be like, okay, and I would go buy it. And I'd go like shell out any money I could like scratch together. And I'd go buy it. So I own CBDC.com too. And then I remember finding 1-800-BITCOIN, the toll-free number, and 1-800-BITCOIN.com. And I'm like, I got into crypto. Like, I showed you my studio real quick. Like, I have Bitcoin to the moon here. And I know people are going to freak out because like H-barbarians hate when I talk about Bitcoin, but none of us would be here if it was not for Satoshi Nakamoto. Okay. He started it all with the publication. On the other side of this, I have the white paper on the wall. And like, my whole point in saying this is, you know, it's how most people learn about crypto to begin with. So I wanted to own 1-800-BITCOIN.com, 1-800-BITCOIN. So I bought that too. And then NFT.com happened very much in the same way, organically, where I got to thinking, what else can you do on a blockchain besides just crypto? Like issuing new forms of money or loyalty points is all of this. And then I started reading about these early attempts at doing these non-fungible tokens. One was written by a guy named Meni Rosenfeld, who does not get enough credit, but he was literally the first dude in the world to try to do a non-fungible token called Color Coins on the Bitcoin blockchain, by the way. Like, he wanted to do this. And this is like in I think it was 2012 was his first proposal. So he is, you know, what Nick Szabo gets a lot of credit for being like the father or the godfather of like smart contracts. But like, you know, Meni Rosenfeld should get that credit for NFTs. And I started talking about NFTs. I remember my first panel on NFTs in like 2018. No one showed up. It was at like some crypto conference. I forget which one. It was like literally 5 people in the room. And I love domain names. I've always loved domain names. I own my last name, which is spelled like fried, but it's pronounced Fareed. I own Fareed.com. So this was logical for me. I'm like, okay, NFTs are going to be a thing you can do on a blockchain. Like CBDC, I already own CBDC.com. Might as well buy NFT.com. And by the way, at this point, while I bought it, I'm like, each of these are applications on blockchains. I'm thinking about like Hedera, like an OS, like an operating system. And I'm thinking about each of these like an icon on your desktop of something to do, like a wallet, an exchange. And I wanted to build the rest of the stack. So I actually left Hedera to stop working here, like at the layer 1, and start working here, like a layer above it. And as you can see, I can't sit still. So we're building NFT.com, and I'm just happy to be building like a software app.
Is it public how much you paid for that, or how much
it is? It is. It got leaked, so it's no longer a secret. So it's pretty well talked about. By the way, the dude that leaked it, he is the guy that I bought it from, who later regretted. I think he regretted selling it to me. To his credit, he owned it, and he was I think the original guy to register the domain name, but he just wasn't a Bitcoin bull. Like, he didn't believe in the I think the full value of the technology of the space. And he started at 3 million. I countered at 1 million. We met at 2 million, and then I never buy a domain name for that number without using a service called escrow.com. So credit to escrow.com. So I actually that year I had 2 of the top domain transactions in the world. I bought NFT.com and PuertoRico.com, where I now live and I call home. And NFT.com was a $2 million purchase, like $2 million, and I think the fees were $20,000 or $25,000 for escrow. That's how they make their money. But by the way, if you're buying a domain name for over $10,000, you need to use escrow.com, because so many of my friends get rug pulled where like they send the guy the money on PayPal and like they never get the domain name. So it's a great service. They take the money, they take the domain name, they swap it. A smart contract, by the way, will completely disrupt that service. You will no longer need that when domain names are NFTs on a blockchain. It's a great use case for a smart contract, but yeah.
That's wild. Yeah, Eric is saying, Jesus, 2 million for words. I mean, but there's so much potential, right? Like, NFTs are just getting started. I mean, I think we can talk about this as we talk about your outlook.
Can I address Eric Notkin here? Because Eric, I felt the same way too. And while I was buying this domain name, I thought I was crazy. I was calling everybody, and everybody was telling me you're crazy. Like, I'd never spent this much money on a domain name ever. But here's why it's not crazy. I knew that we've been dealing with phishing attacks well before crypto. Okay. The phishing attacks have gotten 100 times worse because of crypto. So many of my friends are getting their MetaMask wallets completely wiped out by clicking links that are like OpenZ, spelled with a Z instead of an S, instead of OpenSea, or like all of these fake. I have like 1,000 fake impersonators of me on Instagram that just like keep popping up. People like with these phishing attempts. Why I like NFT.com and a short domain name for the space is you can go to market with a sort of campaign of do not connect your wallet to this website unless you physically typed in the 6 letters behind this domain name, NFT.com, right? Do not connect a wallet. Do not connect your wallet to, by the way, OpenSea.io, like they need to be called out for this. It looks scammy. Why the hell are you .io? Like get the .com, get something reputable, brandable. It just doesn't look good, and it's people keep spoofing it. So NFT.com, my hope was we could build that trust in the brand, and it would be worth the $2 million. I will share here because some of these have been made public as well. We've received offers many, many, many times, obviously what we paid for that. And by the way, when I bought it, the Bored Ape Yacht Club didn't exist yet. Right? None of the NFT craziness happened. This was pre-Bored Apes. So it all happened really quickly. So I get it, Eric. It's crazy. And I felt crazy at the time. It's obviously no longer crazy to have bought that for $2 million. I think that the equity value in the business we're building behind that's going to be pretty exciting. Yeah.
Do you have any guess, like if you were to sell it today, how much you would get for it?
So again, the domain name's not for sale. I think the value is, and much like I said for how you value a protocol, the value of anything is like how many users can you get behind it. So we have today in private beta, we have over 9 million NFTs indexed. Over 10,000 people have registered. I didn't even say what you can do on NFT.com. We've built an aggregator like Blur and like Gem, where you can buy and sell on OpenSea, LooksRare, and X2Y2, as well as an NFT.com native marketplace. But we've taken it a step further. We believe that everyone should own a piece of it. So we allow people to come to NFT.com and register NFT.com/Cryptocito or NFT.com/Jordan or Eric. And you can register those handles, much like a name service, like an ENS, you can register that as an NFT and own that. The way you log into NFT.com is with that handle, with that NFT. If it's in your wallet, you can log in and you can edit the Cryptocito page. That page is your storefront if you are a collection and you want to sell something. It's your gallery if you're a collector. And the idea, and this is what I believe, because I want to get into predictions before we run out of time, but like I believe the next wave of crypto is social. And the reason I feel so confident saying that is I'm 33 years old. I've grown up on the internet from Web 1. I've seen Web 2. I've seen Web 3. What made the internet really explode was social networks. And in the early days before social networks, this was like IRC and message boards, like forums. But what really made the internet sticky was it is human nature to want to talk to someone like Michael. I'm enjoying this conversation right now. We are connecting. We may be sitting on opposite sides of the world, but we are talking, and we were born to storytell and to speak and to be connected and to be communal and live in communities. On the blockchain, we are all anonymized, alphanumeric public key addresses, and that has got to change. We've got to be able to interact and communicate and transact and trade and store value, not just money value, but property value in the form of NFTs. And my bet is that social will drive it forward. A lot of people say like DAOs are the next thing, and DAOs will be part of, I think, the social experience governing the platforms we use. But social is what propelled the explosive growth of the internet. And of course, like high-speed internet had something to do with it too. There's a lot of technical innovation there, but making the internet sticky wasn't email. Email wasn't making the internet sticky. It was social. It was uploading photos. It was messaging. It was, all of this that will also make blockchain networks sticky. So we have this saying inside the company, and we were joking about making like one of those ugly Trump red hats, make networks social again. Which is blockchain networks are what I like to call unsocial decentralized networks. They're the unsocial network. Web 2 was social networks. We have all of these amazing decentralized networks, but they're unsocial. We don't talk to each other on the network. We now need to who are you? you can be anonymous, but like, what do you care about? What do you stand for? And we should be able to message and communicate in secure ways, in decentralized ways. So I'm very excited about decentralized social. I'm very excited about incorporating that in NFT.com.
I want to ask you about your favorite coins and your outlook for this year. But I had one more question. I saw also Kevin O'Leary mention you. He's, as far as I understand, also an investor in your fund. Is that correct?
Yeah. I met Kevin O'Leary a couple years ago in Miami, around the time where he was still not a full crypto believer. And Kevin clearly was open to learning, and I got to be part of that learning. He made a lot of investments in the space. Obviously, FTX was one of the worst ones that he made. And beyond that, you know, Kevin became a spokesperson for them, which I think, of course, was a mistake as well. We can all agree. But Kevin did invest in both our parent company, Immutable Holdings. We operate a venture studio. It's not an accelerator. It's all our own ideas. So all of these domains I told you that we bought, we're now turning them into applications. And NFT.com is an application. It's one of the first things we're building, and we're really excited about that. Kevin invested in our parent company, Immutable Holdings, and also invested, I was able to pitch Kevin HBAR. And when I left Hedera, I wanted to figure out how could I be really helpful to the HBAR ecosystem while no longer working there. And being a full-time evangelist, like, doesn't pay very well. Like, just going around and talking about something isn't like a sustainable business model. So I thought, what if we started an asset management company where we like helped billionaires and their family offices take exposure to like our favorite crypto projects. And we were able to get Kevin into HBAR at a really low price point. He's still in the green. It's not one of the projects that he's lost money on, I can say that. I got him in very, very early. I'm fortunate enough to, Kevin is one of the guys who was public about our conversations. There's many others that less so, but you know, some of these guys own NBA teams. Some of them are presidents of NBA teams. Some of them are famous actors and agents. And it was a successful first fund that we did for Hedera. We may do other funds in the future, but again, it was a way for me to scale. How can I help get more people HBAR exposure? Because I believe in HBAR.
So since you're good at getting people in early, tell us what is the hot narratives for this year. What are some of your favorite coins besides Bitcoin, Ethereum, and HBAR? I guess you're probably a fan of all of these. So what are your biggest bets, and what are your thoughts on Cosmos, if you have any?
Yeah, so I became really good friends with the team behind one of the projects I like a lot is an interoperability project called Axelar. In full disclosure, I'm an investor in Axelar. I stopped speculating on coins in the public market as much. I mean, I still do. If I see a project I really like, I will test it out. I'm very curious and I'm very hands-on. So like the last, you know, I am the kind of person that like gets my wallet, rolls up my sleeves. I have a wallet that I just play with. And, you know, I'll buy the NFT and join the community, or I'll buy the coin and try to like participate in governance. I've done this for like decentral games to like, I love the idea of like being a part owner of a casino. It fascinated me. And like, if you bought this coin, DG, Decentral Games, you could like stake the coin and like be a part owner of the casino every time someone gambled in it. I've tried like Decentraland because I wanted to know like, what is this first experience of like buying a piece of property and all of it. So I'm the kind of person, and I don't talk about this publicly a lot. Like I don't, this is one of the accounts that I don't have a name service attached with. I'm totally anonymous and I just want to like interact, transact, try this stuff out. So I do that piece a lot less because so much of my time is now having conversations like this and then building the business. And I regret that because, you know, I really should like carve out a day just to play with new shit and just to experiment with new technology. I'm very interested in what Lens Protocol is doing. I think they are working on decentralized social in the right way, the way they think about it. So all the sort of like DSO and all the other like decentralized social projects, again, I think that there's going to be a major push and you could see that become a major narrative, like make the blockchain social again. It's a real problem that you have 200 million people on the Ethereum network, but They're all, maybe some of them have a name service attached, but you can't do anything with the name service. There's no like mass adopted messaging service. People do not want to like use the protocol and then like run over to Discord. They don't, like, they just don't. It's not a good user experience. Like, go to Discord and have these conversations. Like, why aren't we doing this on chain? So we have to solve some of these problems. I think we will. And then most of the money I've made, and, you know, again, I'm not a financial advisor. I'm not legally allowed to give financial advice or tax advice. So, you know, insert legal disclaimers here, but the money that I've made is always prior to a token launch, is meeting a founder and betting on somebody before the rest of the market bets on them. Oftentimes when you're buying a coin out of the market, you're buying it too late. Whereas, you know, so many other backers and early participants were buying it well before, because they were bringing some strategic value. And if you're not accredited and you weren't able to do that, like, you can still join the team. Like, if you join the team and stop what you're doing and start working on it, like, there were people that didn't invest in HBAR, but like worked there, and as part of working there earned HBAR. And that's really exciting. So if you can't do it with your capital, because you don't have capital, you have limited resources, like, you can definitely do it with your time and bet on these projects. I'm also fascinated by DAOs. I will say something controversial, which is like, it will be very unlikely to see a DAO system of governance create a mass adopted social application or any type of application. You really do need a benevolent dictator like individual, like a Vitalik, or like a Zuckerberg, or like a Jack Dorsey, to push an app to where I think it needs to go to. But I think a bifurcated model, much like what we saw the Ethereum Foundation adopt in the early days, Ethereum Foundation and Consensus. Like, Consensus is the go-to-market for-profit that built MetaMask and Infura and all the infrastructure around the Ethereum network, while Vitalik focused on like the EIPs, the Ethereum improvement proposals for, like, you know, how are we going to enforce royalties in smart contracts, in NFTs on the blockchain, all that kind of stuff, right? And I do think you need like both. You need the governance, like, how are we making decisions as an app, as a community? So DAOs do excite me, but I like DAOs that also have that for-profit, like, entrepreneur behind it that's trying to create like value, like a capitalist. Like, a DAO on its own, not interested. It's just like, it's a cool social experiment, but like, so is communism and socialism. It just doesn't work. We need both. We need like the go-to-market capitalist that's going to like stay up nights and weekends, work during Christmas to make the thing successful.
Interesting that you say that, yeah, because actually there's a lot of this stuff going on in Cosmos. We actually just had, I don't know if you followed any of that, we just had an on-chain proposal for a roadmap for Atom, for the Cosmos Hub, right? The main kind of like flagship protocol in Cosmos. So a lot of the decision-making is being taken through on-chain governance. And I think that's the right path to go. Also, a lot of funding, right? We do, for example, the major Cosmos conference every year called Cosmoverse. And we also get funded from on-chain proposals through the community treasury. So this helps us also to realize what we have, you know, as an entrepreneurial kind of like endeavor to run a conference.
That's amazing.
So a lot of cool stuff. And I also heard, like, I think from your conversation, maybe we can talk later and I can chill you more into Cosmos. You know? No,
I will say, because of this conversation, next time we talk, I want to be much more intelligent on the Cosmos ecosystem. I mentioned to you before we started recording, I was really into Cosmos in 2017, 2018, because I was popping my head up and I'm like, okay, what is this Tendermint consensus thing? What are they doing with it? What is Cosmos? I'm inspired by, and again, I think you validated, Cosmos validated one of the earlier points I made. The Cosmos SDK is so widely adopted. It's like the greatest software development toolkit for building other blockchains, as witnessed by how many other people, like Do Kwon was a big adopter of it. Other people like Binance were big adopters of it. And there's many, many, many more examples of this. And that's because you guys open sourced earlier and because you built that developer interest in that SDK. So something that Hedera definitely could have learned from, but I got to dive in. So I will dive in. And next time we talk, I'm going to make myself a note. I'm going to be much more informed on Cosmos.
Nice. And by the way, I'm not part of any organization in Cosmos. I'm not part of any team. I'm just a YouTuber and we run the conference, but totally detached from everything. So I'm just excited about it. Same as I'm about Hedera, to be honest. But yeah, that was really cool. I hope, you know, everybody watching live learned a lot and everybody watching the replay. We should do this again at some point. We're planning for half an hour. Now we're at an hour and 4 minutes already.
Wow.
But yeah, it was a good conversation. Really appreciate your time. Any final words? Should people follow you on Twitter? Where should they go if they want to stay updated on what you're doing?
Yeah, my handle here is my only handle. So if an account messages you that's like Jordan Fried 1 or 5 or my name misspelled, it's not me. I operate one Instagram and one Twitter and one LinkedIn. So go check it out. I'm Jordan Fried in all those places. And then go check out NFT.com. It's in private beta now. You still need a Genesis key. They're available everywhere NFTs are available, on the Ethereum network, that is. So OpenSea looks rare. I think there are a couple on X2Y too. Join the private beta or wait for the public beta, which is going to happen sometime this quarter. And it should be a lot of fun. So I appreciate everyone's feedback. And Michael, I can't thank you enough for the time. I'm looking forward to the next conversation.
Sounds good, man. Yeah, I just dropped the links to your profile and the website nft.com so people can safely, follow you and click on that. But yeah, appreciate it. Everybody in the chat. We'll see you guys on Thursday. I have another live stream lined up. So we'll see you then. Take care.
Awesome. Thanks, everyone.